In all of the Halloween franchise, which characters actually should have survived? Now, I'm going to be completely honest. I was originally planning to make this a video about 10 characters who shouldn't have met their demise, but I couldn't find 10 characters in the Halloween franchise that deserve to live. So I'm going to do a top 5 list. In the comments, please share your thoughts on which characters should survive. Let's get into the list. In every horror movie, there are characters that we latch on to and cheer to make it to the end, make it past the killer, and hopefully make it to a sequel. Well, that's if the horror movie is done properly. There are some horror movies where we hate all the characters and want to see them all die, but a good, thoughtful horror movie has characters you cheer to the very end. Now, the Halloween franchise has quite a bit of movies in there, so you would think there'd be a laundry list of characters that make this list easily, but it was very difficult actually to find characters that I sympathize with, empathize with, that I wanted to see Michael not take out. So we're gonna do a top 5 list, and for number 5 of Halloween characters that should have survived, I'm gonna go with Rudy from Halloween Resurrection. Now, what I'm about to say is no endorsement of Halloween Resurrection. I don't think it's a good movie. I think it doesn't have that much rewatchability. I like the ideas in the movie. Thoughts on Halloween Resurrection, we'll say that for another video. But in terms of the characters, well, we have Jamie Lee Curtis dying in the opening, 10 minutes. And this may be controversial, but I'm okay with that. I didn't have a problem with Jamie Lee Curtis dying. I thought it could have been executed better. And then we meet a group of sort of dangertainment caricatures, cardboard cutout characters, I would say, for the most part. Sarah, the main girl, we really don't care for her. You have Busta Rhymes, who's Freddy, who's the head of Dangertainment, is going to put them all at risk here by doing these Michael Myers house shenanigans, booby trapping the house, putting all this fake stuff there to increase entertainment value. I get that all completely. But the character of Rudy, who is sort of the main character's best friend. Rudy is, for the most part, a voice of reason throughout the movie, a voice of logic. Seems like a pretty good dude. And the reason why ultimately I think that he deserved to die was because if you watch his death scene, what brought on his death scene was him sacrificing himself for his best friend. If you remember, Sarah's going up the stairs. Michael Myers goes after Sarah. Now, at this point, Michael heading up the stairs towards Sarah is giving Rudy a clear getaway, a clear chance to save himself and leave the house. So he's in the clear because Michael's prioritizing killing Sarah. But what does Rudy do? He calls attention back to himself. He says, "Hey, Michael." Michael turns his attention and now follows Rudy into the kitchen. And Rudy unfortunately, gets a little bit too clever with, some knives and ends up meeting his demise. But man, being a good friend did not pay off for Rudy at all. This dude just got probably, it seemed to me, the most painful death scene in the movie, it felt like. So being a good friend doesn't always pay. It should be noted also that Sarah, when Michael goes after Rudy, doesn't return the favor of calling back to Michael. She runs upstairs and locks herself in the room, leaving Rudy to be destroyed. Now, some of this also, I'm going to admit, the actor who plays Rudy, Sean Patrick Thomas, at the time I saw Resurrection, I had just seen Save the Last Dance with him and Julia Stiles. So I already liked the actor. So I was cheering for the actor based on my love for Save the Last Dance. But at the end of Halloween Resurrection, when all the smoke is cleared, you find yourself thinking, okay, the surviving characters were Sarah and Freddy, played by Busta Rhymes. Of course, we have the whole shenanigans of Busta Rhymes, Freddy basically kicking the crap out of Michael. But that end role of Freddy having that fight with Michael, getting to save the day, that could have just been her best friend, Rudy. That could have been Rudy's role. Rudy and Sarah surviving then makes way more sense. And by leaving Freddy alive and letting Freddy sort of get over on Michael, it's breaking sort of a cardinal horror sin, which is the person who put our characters in that situation of danger usually has to have some comeuppance. Usually the person who's responsible for everything has to have his comeuppance. They're only in that scenario of Dangertainment House because of Freddy. Freddy's there to make money, which is good. He's a capitalist, whatever. But They're there because of Freddy. And he gets off the hook here. He gets to be the hero and saves the day. And there's never a sequel past this. The movie was bad enough to kill the timeline, so Freddy never gets his comeuppance. And it feels like, he should have died instead of Rudy, in my opinion. Okay, number 4. I'm going with Aaron from Halloween 2018. Now, when I first saw Halloween 2018 in theaters, I was not that impressed with the movie. I had some issues with the sort of out of place comedic moments, much as some of the issues I had with Halloween 5, for example. Some comedic moments felt out of place. Um, I didn't like the Sartain stuff at all. But in terms of the characters, a lot of people point to the character of Vicky, the babysitter, as somebody who should have survived. But I feel like her role was perfect because you do like her, and she makes that middle part entertaining as the babysitter. We all sympathize with her, but her death is something I felt was necessary for that movie to work because the middle part of the movie, since we know that probably Michael's not going to kill either Laurie Strode or Allison or Laurie Strode's daughter, you have to have at least one sort of impactful death there. Now, why am I saying Aaron was the one who should have survived? Because looking ahead to the entire trilogy, what we know now, we wouldn't have known this back at the time of Halloween 2018, but Aaron, who sort of brings Michael back in the fold, teasing him with the mask, this whole podcaster storyline. I know a lot of people don't like the storyline, but I thought Aaron, as a podcaster who had this interest in Michael, but was also skeptical of Michael, had a lot of potential after he got attacked by Michael. After his confrontation, I would just make a quick, small thing of not having him die, but having him fall into a coma. Now, why? Because skip ahead to Halloween Ends, which takes place, a year later after the events or whatever. I think it's Halloween Ends. I think Halloween Ends is a year later. You could then have Aaron sort of out of the hospital, damaged, but now you have sort of almost like an organic new Dr. Loomis, somebody who won't stop until he finds Michael, wants to bring Michael down, wants revenge on Michael for taking out his podcasting partner, who I think was hinted at that there was probably more than a platonic relationship there, more maybe romance there. Bringing Aaron back would have been this a fun thread to go through the trilogy. The trilogy suffers from sort of logically each movie not making sense when paired together as a trilogy. Some of the events and the characters and things like that don't really seem to fit when you watch them all back to back. So the more threads you can put throughout the trilogy, I think would improve people's opinions of it. And having Aaron survive her in part one and bringing him back as somebody who's on the trails trying to find Michael, I think that would have been a cool thing to see in Halloween Ends. Now, listen, you can still kill him in Halloween Ends. You can still take him out at that point. But maybe he sacrifices himself at the last second to help Laurie. I just think it adds something more if you could do more of that character at that point. Number 3, speaking of Halloween Ends, and this one might be a hot take, I'm going with Corey from Halloween Ends. Now, you know, again, this is not an endorsement of the Halloween Ends movie because, to be honest, I wasn't a huge fan of the movie. I felt like there was a good idea in there and a good movie in there, but it felt like the wrong movie for the finality of the trilogy, for the final entry in the trilogy. What the previous movies had been leading up to, I didn't think paid themselves off in Halloween Ends. That said, Corey is basically in Halloween Ends sort of the Jamie Lloyd, even to an extent of having sort of, it seems like, a mental connection with Michael, but Michael slowly having the transference of evil that I enjoyed so much in Halloween 4 is here in Halloween Ends. And it's Corey's story, his descent into madness, him becoming a killer, him, it doesn't have to be that he's the next Michael, he can be the first Corey. But at the very end of the movie, sort of in an anticlimactic way, Michael, basically snaps his neck and kills him. And, I thought it'd be cool after they kill Michael, still the same ending for Michael, maybe cut back to that living room where Corey's laying down and have his eyes open. Even if this is going to be the end of the entire Blumhouse timeline, it would have been fascinating to see that there was a true transference of evil into Corey. And let's be honest, no matter what anybody says, Michael is not a human being. Even in the Blumhouse trilogy, he takes so much punishment, so much more than what a human being could take, that there's something supernatural going on there. So just the hint of that in that timeline, that story that, Michael's gone, but now you have Corey to deal with going forward in that timeline. I just thought it'd been a cool thing to end on. So, and I don't like the way Corey's story ends because it feels like he's the main character of the story, and it feels like he's sacrificed in an anticlimactic way just to give the audience the sort of prototypical Laurie versus Michael ending that didn't feel earned in Halloween Ends. Michael versus Laurie at the end of that movie didn't have any tension to me. Didn't feel like an earned battle because I'm like, wait, this is Corey's story. Why are we getting this? So I would just have Corey not be killed, Corey get away, or Corey's eyes open at the very end in the last shot. Again, I just thought it'd be a cool ending for that. So for number two, this is going to come as no surprise if you've seen my Halloween 5 video. It's Rachel Carruthers. It just doesn't sit well with me or a lot of people that they killed Rachel in such a boring fashion too. It's also like, forget about for a second the element of her dying that early, 21 minutes into Halloween 5. You could just strictly go by the fact that it's an unsatisfactory, terrible death scene. Michael sneaks up on her and she turns around. You cut this very awkward shot of Michael stabbing her in the side shoulder with the scissors. Like, why would Michael stab her in the shoulder? Um, it was just a very unsatisfying death scene. If you're going to kill off a major character, then at least make it mean something. And you could have had her sacrifice herself for Jamie the way that Tina dies. That could have been Rachel's death. That would have been more satisfactory. It's just like, it felt lazy. It felt lazy, and Rachel had so much potential you could have used her again in Halloween 6. You could have brought her back in the series. So much potential wasted with this early, awkward, unsatisfactory death scene. If I could bring Rachel Carruthers back to life, I think we all would. But fortunately, whether it be the writers, directors, production companies, a money issue, it was not to be, and Rachel was taken far too quickly. But hey, listen, we still at least have Halloween 4, where she's a perfect final girl, and that's my favorite sequel, anyways. Okay, so number one, this is going to be predictable, but it's a necessity to say Jamie Lloyd. Now, even though I'm a fan of Halloween 6, again, make no bones about it. I like Halloween 6. I think Halloween 6 is extremely underrated. I think people that hate Halloween 6 should give it an honest assessment, take into account the mood, how cool Michael is, the entire cinematography of the movie. It's a badass movie, in my opinion. But if I could change one thing about the movie, it's Jamie Lloyd. It's her character. It's what they wrote for her. It's her ending in both the producer's cut and the theatrical cut are both unsatisfactory. In the theatrical version, we learn that at the end of part 5, she was kidnapped by the Man in Black and Michael. She's been held captive for the last 6 years. She was forced to have a baby. And now Michael's coming to kill her and the baby and kills her in the opening scene of Halloween 6. Now, you think about Jamie's plight from part 4, 5, and 6. I don't know if there's ever been a character in horror movies who has been given such a rough time. You think about part 4, being chased by Michael and at the end stabbing her mom. Part 5, her two big sister figures, Rachel and Tina, both killed. And now in part 6, like I don't know, like if they just like they wanted her arc to be like extremely tortured, innocent child turned to teenager and then murdered. Like, man, nobody in this franchise got a rawer deal than Jamie Lloyd. And even though, it'd have been nice for Danielle Harris to come back in part 6, would you have wanted to see her get that ending? Probably not. I mean, it's so egregious that a lot of fans really want, like, seriously, for the franchise to do a sequel to part 4. Just ignore 5 and 6 and pick up from that. People want to revisit Jamie Lloyd with an adult Danielle Harris just to give that character better closure. Jamie Lloyd is the Tommy Jarvis of this series. She's the Alice from A Nightmare on Elm Street of this series. She's the final girl, final character who kept the middle part of the franchise together. And both of those characters had basically maybe unknown endings, but they weren't killed. So Tommy Jarvis, we can assume, is Summer living happily. Alice from Nightmare living happily. Jamie Lloyd, just a miserable ending. Yes, I would support a Halloween 4 direct sequel. I think it maybe would only ever happen though in a fan film. But anyways, that's just my thought on 5 characters that I would like to see and have survived. Again, please in the comments give your opinions on who would you have liked to see make it past Michael. I will say this: the franchise, as much as I love the Halloween franchise, it was very hard to find sympathetic characters in the same way that Elm Street, even the Friday 13th, it was very easy to think of characters I would have liked to see survive, but not so much in the Halloween franchise. I don't know what that means, but it is what it is. So, but until next time, guys.